You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes with. Beez McKeever is a costume designer, a stylist, and a former prop diva for Mystery Science Theater 3000. Beez, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
It is. I'm so excited to have you on the show and sit and talk to. We've been working together for the past couple of weeks, but it's great to sit down and learn a little bit more about you.
Well, thanks for having me.
I think you are super fascinating. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Duluth, and I lived in northern Minnesota, Cloquet, for a few years, and then I moved to the Twin Cities when I was in kindergarten, and pretty much been a Twin Cities gal. I spent a few years in Wales, had a little Welsh adventure, and came back, and so now I'm back in the Twin Cities for the most part.
So in the Midwest?
Yep.
And when you were growing up as a kid, what was like the first kind of creative outlet that you found that really grabbed you?
First creative outlet was, there was always kind of arts and crafts things, and I always sort of gravitated towards them. There was like a little sort of art camp thing that I did as a kid, and there was like a puppet wagon that used to come through my town, and there were just certain things that sort of sparked my curiosity and got me, of course, I loved all the Muppet things, and so I had my own little puppet collection, and my friends and I would just fart around and make our own shows, and yeah, we just play and...
Yeah. And were your parents creative at all?
I would say my mom is fairly artsy craftsy, and she's a good knitter and all that kind of stuff. My dad did a little bit of painting, but he was kind of more of a, just like a fix-it guy. He's just a guy who could figure out how to fix different things. So it's good to be handy, too, I think, when you're trying to figure out different props and different, gadgets and gizmos. Just trying to use field expedients, okay,
yeah.
How can we fix this thing, using what we've got?
Right. And were you, when you got to, high school, were you still involved with creative stuff in high school?
I was a theater geek. I did some plays. I auditioned for some stuff. There's a theater called Children's Theater, and I did a couple shows there. And then I've just always gravitated towards art classes, and I had my own sort of independent study art class, and, just always kind of... It was always a good outlet for me and to work through different emotions or just whatever kind of crazy idea I had roaming through my head found an outlet, usually on paper.
So were you drawing or painting, or what was your medium, or everything?
It's just kind of everything. It's just I feel like an idea comes to mind, and then you figure out the best way to serve that purpose. Maybe it's a little weird sculpture, or maybe it's a little drawing, or maybe it's a little, YouTube video, or whatever it is. It's just you kind of figure out how to tell your story based on what the little idea is.
And were you hanging out with a lot of other creative people as well? Were you just drawn to them?
Yeah, pretty much. I've always been kind of on the fringe. I wasn't one of the popular girls. I was sitting at the weirdo table. But I think it served me well. I mean, now my weirdo friends are doing very well in life, and we've all found outlets for our weirdness, and it's good.
Yeah. And after high school, did you go to college?
I did go to college.
And what did you study there?
I studied theater arts at the University of Minnesota, and I got a BA in that. And meanwhile, part of the time mostly I was waitressing, but I also got to work for a company called V Corp, who makes Sesame Street Live costumes. So I made Cookie Monster feet and different kinds of kind of giant, heads, and I worked in the fur salon, and that was very fancy.
When did costuming, because you're kind of known now for your costuming and stuff, when did that start?
Actually, the first thing I costumed was a little play. I'd found a book in the library that was like a little book of plays, and there was this thing called The Potted Princess, and it kind of sparked my curiosity, so my teacher indulged me and let me put on this little play with my classmates, and so the first thing I costumed was The Potted Princess with my 4th grade class.
And what did that costume look like?
I had this little pink dress with a little hoop skirt that I made out of, like clothes hangers and attached to the inside. And there was some kind of little makeshift crown. I don't know how I fashioned that at the time, but, just like, what do we got, Mom? Okay, I got some glitter and some glue and paper plate, whatever it took.
Yeah, well, that certainly seems like your dad's figuring out how to fix things. It's like, I need a hoop skirt. I'm bend some hangers and
yeah. So it's always kind of been an instinct that I had, kind of MacGyver it and make it work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what was it like working for the Sesame Street Live stuff?
I thought it was of course it was a great learning experience, and you learn different kind of techniques. So like, how can I sew fun fur in a way where I don't cut the fur, and how do I, make nice seams, and, they have different ways that they can make the costumes lighter and get more air circulation in them. So I learned a lot of tricks there. But it wasn't as creative as I'd hoped, because it's all sort of formulaic at this point, Mm-hmm. We know who these characters are, we know what the pattern is. So once you make one Cookie Monster foot, you've made them all.
Right.
It isn't the same, it's not like the kind of list you'd get from Mystery Science Theater, where it's just like, it's always something different, it's always something crazy.
Yeah. But was it a fun experience? Because you said you were a fan of Jim Henson and stuff as a kid. Was
Absolutely.
Like getting to work with... Did you ever get to meet anybody coming through there, like to look at stuff on the shows, or? No,
we were remote enough that there was like one gal who was in charge of putting the pupils on the eyes. Like, there was one person who was equipped, like, knew exactly where the eye placement, that was very important to have, if it's a little bit off, like the face is different, the gaze is different. So we were far enough away that we didn't get that kind of attention. Mm-hmm. But it was still nice to see the process and the level of detail and just the professionalism of it. These were very tidy costumes. They were well engineered.
Yeah. And after V Corp, where did you head off after that?
After that, I was always waitressing, and then I started freelancing a little bit. I was a waitress at Glam Slam, which was Prince's Club, and people would come through. Prince was always making videos, and I overheard somebody saying, "Oh, the Prince is recording and blah blah, he's doing videos." And so I gave this person my number. I said, "I would love to be a production assistant. If you ever need any help, I'll take out the garbage, I'll get the donuts, whatever you need." So one of the first things I did was to be a PA for a Prince video.
Oh, wow.
And then once I graduated from college, that's when I applied for my internship at Mystery Science Theater. And then 2 weeks into the internship, they said, "We'd like to pay you." And I was like, who doesn't like money?
Right.
Do you want to make more money? Sure, we all do.
Of course.
So, yeah.
Well, let me go back to, just because we'll get to Mystery Science Theater, but you mentioned Prince, and I know that you're a fan of Prince. Huge fan of Prince. What was that like, getting to, did you interact with him at all, or were you just like PA out of the way kind of thing?
You're never supposed to interact too much with Prince. Like, back, usually he spoke, via channels. Like, he would talk to somebody who would talk to somebody. But because I'd waited on him enough, he did do a little interacting with me. Like, I worked on the Gold video, and I was his glitter girl. So he did give me direct direction of, like, okay, at this point in the song, throw the glitter into the fan and glitter me. Yeah. And so yeah, I was Prince's glitter girl.
Oh, that is really amazing.
But it was a really magical kind of factory. Like, he was a machine. He was working all the time, just around the clock, and they would just bust through, like three videos in one fell swoop. Like, there'd just be a series of days that the studio was just rocking it. Yeah.
And would you say, like, he's a huge influence on you, like, creatively?
He really is a huge influence on me. I mean, Purple Rain came out, and that kind of sparked the idea in my head of, this is something that I can do in Minnesota. It isn't some Hollywood dream. It's something I can do right here.
Right.
And an industry kind of grew around the success of that film. Of course, by the time I got done with high school and college and everything, it had sort of died down a little bit, the film part of it. Right. But the commercial part of it has always been quite strong in Minnesota.
So your internship at Mystery Science Theater quickly turned into a paid job. And what was your job right there at the beginning? Was it because you became the prop diva, but were you doing props right from the start?
Yeah, pretty much right from the start, because it was a really super, super small operation. Mm-hmm. And there were, the art department at that time was Elena Espinoza and myself. And so it was just, you just do whatever needs to be done. It was all hands on deck. It was a non-union shop. And, so I did, they're like, oh, Beez can sew. So they started throwing some, costuming things my way, and then like a lot of soft props. I was a good shopper for them because being a thrifty crafter, it's just like, oh, I need to go to the Axeman surplus store. Oh, I need to go to Goodwill. And it was all really just a good fun job for me to do, And then on set, then you'd do set deck, you would help puppet wrangle. Sometimes I'd be in a trench and I'd be like, I'm going to help with an arm or a leg, or, I'll be stripper crow legs, or, pyrotechnics, getting the fire trough going or whatever. We'd work together on that too, so.
Yeah, one of the things I've always admired, and I think I said this to you the other day, is that the original show just sort of seemed like this great small little family, and it seemed like everybody, like as a fan watching the show, you knew everybody, even though you didn't really know everybody. You knew, your name stood out, of course, but like, other people on the list, it's like, oh, it's the same short list of people who worked on this. So how was that like working with all those other folks on the show?
It was a really tight-knit, fun family, and everyone has a fantastic sense of humor, and just the pace of it was a little bit different. It was a full-time job, like basically a 9-to-5 job with some overnighters thrown in for good measure, and we were a family, and we'd have rehearsal days where we could work through everything to kind of get all the, get everything tidied up, and then we'd shoot it. It had a really nice pace to it, so it didn't feel frenetic, and I would laugh so much during the course of the day that my face would hurt. I mean, really, I wish there would have been this. Now, in my day, we didn't have cell phones and all that, so much of that was lost. Yeah. But just the energy on set was just really fun, and we laughed as much. I mean, you can only laugh when you're not shooting, but we laughed a lot for the wrong reasons. Right. Did you have a favorite prop that you made, or a favorite? It doesn't even necessarily be a prop, a favorite costume, something that you made from the run. I really liked Crow's Droppy, the water droplet costume. Oh my gosh, he looked so adorable. It was like a candy kiss pattern that I'd used, but then just to put it around his cute little head, and he looked adorable, and I think it was a pretty funny scene, because that's the other part of it too. You could make a really funny prop and be like, but I didn't really love the scene as much. Yeah. Like Tickle Me Carla Lombardi was a pretty fun prop to make, and I thought it looked good, but the scene wasn't the funniest scene in that particular show. Right. So you all kind of weigh that into it.
And in addition to being, I think this goes to with what I was saying before, it's such a small group of people who are working on the show. Mm-hmm. You also got pulled into, playing a couple different characters on the show. And was there any trepidation to that, or just like, nope, I'm going to do it because I know you have an acting background anyway.
I do.
But yeah.
No, I mean, it was slightly nerve-wracking because, of course, you don't want to whiz it down your leg. But
we don't want to do that in general.
Yeah, just in general, you don't want to screw it up. Right. But no, I mean, like I said, it has a real nice family feeling to it. So if you've only got a dozen people looking at you and you feel like you're flying under the radar anyways, it's just like, well, a baker's dozen people are going to see it. It's fine. Yeah. But I'd studied acting, and so I had a few chops. Right. And so the writers were also the actors, were also the directors. So Kevin was the director on the Steffi the Babysitter one, and he's just, I mean, all of them were great at directing too. So he was good about helping me, hit the right pace, because that's with comedy, it's always that thing of like, you want to get your beats right, you want to pause long enough but not too long, and so I think he helped me get my pacing right, and I think that there's some really funny scenes. Yeah, no, it's definitely classic character. So after the show, were you with it all the way through the end? I was there from 7 to 10. 7 to 10, okay. Mm-hmm. And so what's it like, not talking about what's the future, the Kickstarter thing and all that, but what's it like being a part of a show that became such a cult phenomenon, really? Mm-hmm. It's a trip. It's a really good trip, but it's not as big of a deal as maybe you'd think, because being in Minnesota, everything is pretty darn low key, and everyone just keeps you humble because nobody really cares. They're like, oh yeah, that show. I mean, I think there's something about something being right under your nose that you don't really see its value as much. Like, I found that people who are farther away from it have more appreciation for it than my peers, because they're just like, oh yeah, and then Beez did that puppet show. Like, it just didn't carry as much weight. So that's why it was kind of nice to get onto the internet at some point and to start interacting more with the Misties, because I'm like, oh, people did see what we did and they liked it, and they enjoyed the work, because otherwise you kind of feel like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
It was nice to feel appreciation for the work.
Yeah. Well, since, after Mystery Science Theater ended, you've worked on a bunch of different projects. And I know that more recently you worked on Lady Dynamite, the Maria Bamford show on Netflix. But what other shows have you worked on that really stand out that you're proud of?
I worked on a movie called Wilson that we shot last year. That was a Woody Harrelson movie that's coming out pretty soon. Kind of a dark comedy. That was a really fun experience. And I just dressed the extras for that one. I was more of an on-call person. And worked with a great costume department. And then Lady Dynamite came around, and they shot most of that in Los Angeles, but the stuff that's supposed to be the Minnesota stuff, we shot in Minnesota. And I got to meet Mary Kay Place, who's an absolute doll. And she just has brilliant subtlety and pacing, and she was just a treat. And Ed Begley Jr. is in that one, and he's really a funny, funny man. And he's a very strict vegetarian. And one day I was on the elevator, like, you have to go, you're working at a high pace and fast pace, and you have to get your breakfast in the morning. And usually my breakfast is cup o' bacon. So here I am in the elevator with a strict vegetarian Ed Begley Jr. And he just gave me this sort of like, I see your cup of bacon. Like, not judging, but just sort of like, I see it.
Yeah.
And then I felt shame. But I still love bacon.
Yeah, who doesn't? Well, Ed Begley Jr.
Yeah, Ed Begley Jr.
But, and you've done some video game stuff as well, right?
I did do a video game, and this was back, it was really a long journey. It ended up taking 10 years for this game to come out, because it was one man, a brilliant man, Jeff Williams, created a game called Darkstar. And I got to do the wardrobe for it, and I got to be a space pilot. And it was one of those full motion video games that, I mean, by the time it came out, that was something that had come and gone. Like, people weren't playing those sorts of games anymore, which is a shame, because it's really like unfolding a movie. There's tons of video footage in it. And that's where I got to work with Frank again, and I got to work with Joel and Trace, and it was really an interesting experience, like a lot of green screen work. And it's like, here's this C-stand and this thing, and that's going to be your console. Imagine this is your space console. And it was a good imagination exercise, trying to create a space in your own head in a green screen world. Yeah.
Well, as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to ask, you mentioned before that you did a lot of waitressing. And a lot of times I think people who are creative, you have to find that other job to do while, to pay. Do you recommend, like, do you think it's a good thing to have another job like that while you're pursuing your creative dreams?
I think it is really good. I mean, you got to pay the bills at the end of the day. And just even now, there's jobs that I would say are more creative jobs for me, and there's jobs that pay the bills, and you just have to find balance in your own head about it. It's not all going to be, your proudest work, but you have to always be driving yourself towards that thing that you want. But, you got to put food in your mouth, and you got to put a roof over your head. And waitressing, if you can find whatever you can do that's flexible, people that will allow you the freedom to go do what you need to do when you need to do it.
Right. Yeah, so I was a substitute teacher for years because that was flexible. I could just take days off and it wouldn't matter.
Be an Uber driver.
Driver, there you go.
Yeah, just do whatever it takes to just keep following your dream and making your nut.
Are you, you're working on projects, but are you still doing art on your own, like for your own stuff still?
Sometimes I make like YouTube videos, or sometimes I'll just do, there's always something kind of brewing. I really like sculpture a lot, and sometimes I don't have time to do it, right now I've been on kind of like an image finding odyssey. Like I've just been searching the far reaches of the internet to find odd things. And it's just a creative exercise for me to find the weirdest, craziest shit I can find and then just, start a riff about it on my Facebook page or whatever. It's fun to get people involved with it of like, okay, what are my very funny friends going to say about this now? And it makes it a bit more interactive and it's fun for me.
Well, Beez, thank you so much for talking to me today. I so appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Beez McKeever is an artist, costume designer, and the former prop diva of Mystery Science Theater 3000. She was also today's guest on 15 Minutes With. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Merle Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Stephen Staver, Jackie Climo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ng, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wabshall, Twitter user Butzingear, a.k.a. Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Morino, and Reed Loveland. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And if you have feedback for the show, you can send it directly to me at grant@throwingtoasters.com or get in touch via Twitter, where my username is ToasterBoy. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. The GrantCast is copyright 2016 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer. All rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com. Elf-Centered is a monthly, completely improvised broadcast from Santa's Village. Join elves Gavin, Beatrice, and Gary as they talk about the latest goings-on from the North Pole. He has a pass to the radio station.
I know, but he's got to go through the security check.
Well, he'll be fine.
Okay.
You know Gary, drop of a hat, he'll strip down to his jingle shoes.
That's what we're worried about.
Oh.
He's been red-nosed.
Really?
Yes, he has. He has.
Oh, no.
Well, subscribe to Elf-Centered. Visit elfcenteredshow.com today. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.